When I was developing this episode, you were one of the first people, I mean this, one of the first people that I wanted to interview because you truly embody the spirit that podcast is about. You've been so open about your own mental health struggles. You've also forged your own path, a non-traditional news route, if you will. And you've also been a voice to the younger generations, the Gen Z, the millennials, as a journalist. So I'm truly honored to have you on, and I really thank you for coming on today.
Thank you. Thank you for saying all that. And thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
So let's rewind. Let's start at the beginning. Tell me about little Savannah.
Very anxious is sort of the headline, especially when I was young. But I grew up in California to just the best family. My parents are awesome. We're such a close family. It's my parents and my sister and I. I grew up in San Diego and uh, to quite strict parents, I would say. I feel is like kind of the headline about how I was raised in a way that now I look back on and I'm extremely grateful for, but at the time was less fun. Um, but it was just like I'm trying to think of examples. Like I remember one time because I was a huge rule follower and a very like goody two shoes type. And
Interesting.
so I asked actually for permission one time to go to a party, which is obviously like not the way you do it. You're supposed to like go and hope nobody finds out. And my dad most certainly did not say yes, and in fact came home with a binder from the police station, which he stopped by, about what happens if the cops bust up underage drinking. That was my dad's
Wow.
vibe, very strict, but in a way that was like meant to protect us. I'm the first person in my family to go to college. And so my dad was like very much about focusing on how to raise my sister and I to like make sure that we had the right opportunities and make sure that we made the right choices that set us on the right path to do that. But it was just always an adventure. Like I remember also freshman year, I think it probably was, that someone asked me to homecoming and my dad had a meeting with the principal to discuss it. Freshmen went to the dance with a date. Just funny stuff like that. It's like a very involved dad. When we were applying for school, he had this insane spreadsheet going of all the places that we had applied and like the average temperature and the retention rate and if there was Greek life and male to female ratio. Just so funny. And then my mom is just like much more of like a free spirit vibe than my dad, but she just is like a very happy person who's like always got a craft, always got a project, very creative. And so like the two of them I feel are very much like who and how I am. Like I very much am a product of that mix of people. But the fact that he like protected me in that way, and it's certainly like I felt like as I grew up and then certainly as I took on, moving far away from home, first for school, I went to school in Colorado and then to New York, that like not even in like a financial way, but just that there was like a support safety net, and I think that like it was from knowing the way that my dad wanted the best for my sister and I in such an obvious way that was known to like everyone around us. So yes, I'm very grateful for it, as is my sister, who's like my best friend and we're super close. She's also in New York with me. So yes, we're very lucky. And then and they helped me, to the extent that they could with the anxiety. I honestly didn't really have the words to like express a lot of it, but just a very, very fortunate in my upbringing.
Yes, you wrote an op-ed in Teen Vogue a couple of years ago, and you were open and you said, quote, "From age 11 to 14, most days began on my knees on cold, hard tile with my head over a toilet. Throwing up was as much part of my morning routine as brushing my teeth. My body was racked with so much anxiety before school, and the unfortunate reaction was constantly feeling sick. You called this undiagnosed anxiety disorder." You also, and from the outside perspective, I always think of you as like the cool girl that everybody wanted to
Oh
be
my God,
friends with.
very nice and
But
not.
you say in here, "I worried constantly about saying the right thing to my peers, all people I perceive to be much cooler than me."
Uh, uh-huh.
And that really struck me. What was your 11 to 14 years like, and how did you stay mentally strong through all of that?
Yeah, I mean, those are definitely the roughest years of my anxiety, though it's, I think for a lot of people, a lifelong sort of battle. But I hesitate to use that word because I think I've learned enough about myself to kind of use it as like a superpower, but it's still tough, no question. Um, but yeah, those years were hard. And I think it almost feels kind of like it came out of nowhere. It certainly does for my parents. And my parents, we talk about this actually a lot as a family because as you just read there, I was like so anxious every day about going to school and I would throw up before school every day. And it's funny because now my parents are like, we talk about it a lot. Actually, they're like, we didn't know that it was happening to that extent. Like we never would have let, and my sister, who, is standing in the bathroom brushing her teeth right next to me while I'm throwing up, fully knew about it. And she's always like, I can't believe you guys act like you didn't know about it. We knew about it the whole time. Like it was so bad. It was every day. And I think it is a testament to, with mental health, how hard it is to find the words to ask for help or to even know what you do need or even know what's wrong, especially when you're young. And that's certainly what I was going through. And there were like ways that I sort of, combated it and ways that my parents did know in some ways. Like I think I wrote about in that article, like I was so scared getting out of the car every day that, and my dad hated that. And he drove me to school every day and he knew that I was feeling that way, and this always like makes me kind of emotional. When he would drive off every day, he would be looking in the rear view watching me and he would tap the brakes 3 times. And that was for, I love you. And I would like do this little thing, kind of brushing my hair so that he saw that I saw it. And so there were those ways that like people around you can support, but it was also at a time where we were not talking about it nearly as much, right? And certainly not with the language of like, so many people are going through this and it's okay and we can help and there is support and you are not alone. Like that was not the vocabulary around something that just felt so unknown to me. Like I woke up and like there were certain things I could kind of pinpoint, like, oh gosh, I have Spanish today and that teacher scares me, or I have to present in front of people and that's scary, or this one class with this girl that isn't very nice. There were certain things that you could know, but then it was also this more generalized feeling, which is where that undiagnosed like real anxiety disorder was coming from. And I think that the biggest thing for me that I don't really think I knew then was that now I know I am not alone. Now I know how many other people feel this way. Now I know how healthy and good it is to talk about feeling this way, and not only for yourself, but to help other people, and knowing that that can have an impact. So that's really why I've talked about it. I mean, obviously that was a little difficult to write. I don't mind sharing because I very much feel in a lot of facets of my life, this or anything else, that I have this platform. I cannot believe I have it. I cannot believe anybody, really would care at all what I have to say. But if I do, then I will for sure use it to help other people and make other people feel less alone. And so that's just been a big thing for me is talking about it and reporting on it, like really taking away the stigma and taking away the mystery and recognizing and naming that this is something that so many people struggle with and talking through solutions and help.
Yeah, you pinpointed it so correctly. You said that it makes people feel less alone. It made me feel less alone. I'm sure that you received tons of comments and messages and emails after that op-ed came out saying, thank you for sharing that, right?
Totally. I definitely did. A lot. And actually a few that really struck me too were parents reaching out, like who were like, I don't know how to help my child. They, like I didn't, aren't necessarily recognize it, but I can tell, I can see the fear. People that I work with here are talking about how it helped them understand what their kids were going through. So that's been a huge blessing to me. And again, like I can't believe that that's something, like any type of little power that I have is that I can help somebody, but it's pretty amazing. I think we all like to help people. We all know it makes us feel good, but it just is one of those things where like when you do talk about it and you get that reaction, it's really validating.
Absolutely. It also makes me think of people and young individuals, well, actually any individual that's depressed, and somebody will say, well, they look so happy. Well, of course they did, because it's protecting themselves. They don't want to necessarily go out and mope around. They might put on a brave smile when they're dealing with that battle inside,
Absolutely. Oh, so true. And I try to be good about being honest, obviously writing that op-ed, sharing that op-ed, posting things on Instagram about, like I post all the time, no hair and makeup, or actually like really the opposite of hair and makeup, like when I arrive at work and it's real scary and just like kind of being real about, like this is not always what it looks like. It's not it's not always great. And I think I think talking about my anxiety in that same way is like that whole concept of like, don't forget that Instagram is somebody's highlight reel. Exposing this and talking about it is kind of like a reminder that like, I mean, yeah, like I'm so blessed in so many ways. Like I do love my job. I know I have a great career. I know I'm pretty young to have the career that I have. I love my husband. I'm blessed with this great marriage. Like there are good things, but there are a lot of other things that are not that they're not good, but that constantly have me in, examining my mental health. And that can happen to anyone, anywhere.
You also mentioned having phobias of the wind,
Yeah.
Ferris wheels, carousels. Is that still something that you have a challenge with?
It is. It is, which I know is really bizarre sounding. But yeah, that's a phobia based anxiety disorder where I have a few triggers, basically, in the same way that somebody might have like something that sounds a little bit more normal, like they have a phobia of spiders or something like that, which usually manifests itself a little bit more obviously like somebody just being scared. But for me, mine is like I have these triggers that really cause me anxiety. What it really comes down to, it seems, after living with this for my whole life and working through it, is it's kind of things where there's this lack of control. And so the wind can feel like this like big scary thing that feels like you have no control over, this like natural force. And yeah, when I was young, it was really bad. And it was obviously that one was very confusing for my parents. Like, I wouldn't go to birthday parties if it was really windy outside where there's balloons that are going to be like bouncing around. And sometimes it would mean I couldn't go to school because my anxiety was just so bad. And then the merry-go-round Ferris wheel thing is things that move in a repetitive motion. So, like, I don't really do boats. I will sometimes do boats if I've had like a glass of rosé and I'm feeling a little bit more relaxed. And then it sounds maybe I could pretend I'm having fun and not have a total freak out. But the like constant rocking of a boat, no matter how, actually it's sometimes worse when it's just like this minor rocking that I kind of like fixate on. But yeah, there's a lot going on up here. And I think the phobia thing and the fact I still deal with it is definitely a testament to my mental health still being an on. I mean, I think for anyone, whether you think you have any type of mental health disorder or you just are a person, your mental health, just like your physical health, is something that you should be in tune with. It's something that you should be sharing with others as much as you are comfortable, and knowing that can help other people also, I hope, makes people be more encouraged to do so. But for me, my mental health is a lifelong fact for me. Just like we all have it, but for me it's a top of mind thing a lot. And I mean, a lot of times too, the way that I think about my anxiety or describe it sometimes, especially like to my husband, who says like he doesn't think he deals with anxiety. There are certain things that I notice that I'm like, maybe that's kind of like more anxiety, just like stress with this or whatever. But having to explain it to somebody who loves you and supports you and wants to understand it, and who knows most things about you, but this like can't figure this one out. The way that I kind of describe it is I think about it as kind of like weather in my head. Sometimes it's a cloudy day and sometimes it's a sunny day. And I often don't know why it's a cloudy day, where they came from. And then other times I very much do know why. And I also just know if I'm like in a baseline level of anxiety, like there's no way I'm getting near a boat. There's no way I'm going to go do something that I know is going to be a trigger for me. So, it's the way I have to live, but it is what it is.
God forbid you get a news assignment at an amusement park.
No, I know. I actually did go on a boat for the Today Show to do a story on Luke's lobster. And I also don't like seafood, and I ate the lobster roll as well, which was a really fun assignment. But that's where like I know what to do, where I have to get myself kind of like in the right headspace. But yeah, you're right. Like if they were like get on a merry-go-round or Ferris wheel, I mean, that would make probably good television in a way that you don't really want.
Speaking of your career, what inspired you to get into journalism in the first place?
I kind of always knew I wanted this, and it really came from my grandma. I spent a lot of time with my grandma growing up when my parents were at work, and we would watch the Today Show together a lot. And it was, she would always say, you should be like Katie Couric. And, I grew up just like such a fan of the show, and it was such a part of my life and our mornings in my house, whether I was at my house or my grandma's house. And so I heard that a lot. And then when I was in the 8th grade, I came to the East Coast on what was called the 8th grade East Coast trip. And we visited a bunch of different cities, and one of them was New York. And so it was my first time in New York City, where I always loved, and I knew the Today Show was here, so I was like fascinated by it. And we visited the Today Show Plaza like with my little group, and it just like sealed the deal for me. Like seeing it up close, I was like, I just have to move here and I have to work here. And so it was a little bit of an obsession and like a very targeted hope, for kind of my whole life, which I feel really lucky about, because I know if you don't know what you want to do, that's a whole other challenge. You know what I mean? Rather than just like going for something that is challenging or maybe hard to reach, it's its own challenge to have to kind of figure out what you want. And I did always know that. So I felt blessed by that, but it was sort of like my hope and my destiny, I feel, for much of my life.
So, what did you do first? Did you go to school for journalism?
I did, yeah. So I went to the University of Colorado at Boulder. I was torn between going there and to UC school, because I'm from San Diego, so UCSB. And the thing is the UC school system, I would have had to major in communication. They don't have journalism. And then I got a big scholarship to the University of Colorado, so it made it possible and helpful for my family for me to go there. And I was interested anyway because they had a journalism school. There were other schools now that I just didn't know about then. Again, I was the first person in my family to go to college, and it's not like there were, an alma mater for either of my parents, or honestly, even aunts and uncles and stuff. A lot of people hadn't gone to school. And so they're like, now I'm like, oh my gosh, why didn't I apply to Mizzou or like some of these other places? But my University of Colorado experience was fantastic. I'm on the board of the journalism school now, and I absolutely love it and advocate for the school constantly. But it just kind of so happened, and they had, at the time, it was called the School of Journalism and Mass Communication. And so I was able to focus on broadcast news was my major. And that was very lucky, because it was sort of like it accomplished what, going to undergrad, maybe like had I gone somewhere where I would have majored in communication and then needed to go to journalism school after. This was targeted the whole time, was like focused, like we were doing newscasts, I was taping packages, I was editing my reel together, that type of thing. So yeah, I started there.
We'll talk about NBC, but did you have any internships prior to going to NBC?
All my internships were at NBC. It's like the only place I've ever worked, plus one summer at Barnes and Noble. It's pretty much my only employers. I interned at NBC San Diego, again, where I'm from, after my freshman year and after my sophomore year, which now I'm not even sure if that's allowed, because like things have gotten stricter with like college credits and all that kind of stuff. But I was very young when I started. I did after my freshman year, an internship with the assignment desk at NBC San Diego under my fabulous boss, who's still a friend of mine, named Jesse Garcia. And then I wanted to come back the following summer, and he let me do essentially like a reporting internship, where between my sophomore and junior years, I would go out with a different reporter every day, or sometimes, spend a week with one or whatever. And I still know and love them all. It's so fun when I go home and I see them on air. But they would let me come out with them, shadow them, see what they were doing, and then tape, whatever kind of stand-ups they were doing, I would try them out. And it's funny, like there are some big stories, that were big news stories in San Diego that like I got to be there and tape some stand-ups. So I have those somewhere, though no one ever needs to see them. But that was those first two. And then between my junior and senior year, I interned here in New York at MSNBC. The whole time I was studying abroad, my second semester junior year, I was like frantically applying for internships and didn't think I was hearing back. And then I actually really wasn't hearing back. So then I like went rogue and found just any producer's name I could actually find, like a human and an email address online. And I emailed them all. And a guy named Brad Gold emailed me back. He was a senior producer on the 6 p.m. MSNBC show. And he was like, actually, we do still need an intern. Can you do a video interview? And I'm like, yes. And then I got it. And I came here for that summer in between junior and senior year, which is also when I interviewed for the Page program, which is how I started in New York after college.
Amazing. Let's talk about that, because you went a route that is considered to many to be non-traditional when it comes to news. News is typically this small market, middle market, big market kind of climb, but you forged your own path. So let's talk about your journey at NBC.
Yes. How much time do you have? I'll try to make it fast-ish, but it is an interesting one, I think. So we started as a page, which is, if you don't know it, you probably do, because it's like forever, like, immortalized in the show 30 Rock with Kenneth the Page. But it's sort of like a postgraduate internship-like program. You come in and you rotate through different facets of the company. It's really cool. And it's tough to get into. So when I got in, I knew, okay, at least I'm coming here for the page program, because had I not gotten in, I definitely would have gone into local news. I was working on a reel. I would have done a road trip, dropped the tape off everywhere, and moved wherever I got a job. But I got into the page program, so I came here, always wanted to be in New York. My best friend also, who was my random roommate freshman year, and who I actually, funnily enough, lived with until I moved in with my husband, decades later. But she got a job in the magazine industry. I was going to the page program. So, we moved to New York, and it was this whole dreams coming true thing. I was a page, and then I went on to be the assistant to two correspondents, Kate Snow and Harry Smith, both people that I am still very close with and look up to. Kate and I actually anchor together sometimes, which is so fun and funny. And Harry has since retired from NBC, but he was a dad, father figure to me and taught me so much, and he's a real TV legend. So I took that job because I was I will still be learning from people who do the job that I want. And then that job was only a year long. I became the assistant to the president of MSNBC. And that step was that was a confusing one for me, because again, I was maybe I should go into local now when I finished the job with Kate and Harry. Do I want to be an assistant again? Do I want to go into a more administrative type of assistant? But it was actually my dad who really said a few things to me. First of all, he was just I don't think that you're done in 30 Rock. You made it there. You made it to 30 Rock. You've always wanted to be there. That's where the people that do what you want to do are. You can learn from them. I just don't know if it's time to leave. And then I also thought about the fact that if I did go into local, someone like the president of MSNBC is whose desk I would want my reel to end up on. So maybe going and making this relationship with him isn't a bad thing. And it wasn't. I mean, I'm very close to him still. His name's Phil. He's awesome. He's family. He's friends with my dad now. It's a whole family affair. And I also didn't know so much. And I tell people who ask me for advice all the time that any job where you're learning something is a good job. And I did not know anything about stacking a cable lineup or marketing new shows or talent management. And so taking that job was great. It also meant that it put me in a position where I was privy to things that were going on and projects that were coming down the pipeline. And so the way it really started with me on camera was we had this partnership with an organization called Global Citizen. They throw this big festival in Central Park in New York City and a few around the country every year. It's an organization working to end global poverty. And we were broadcasting it on MSNBC. And this is kind of a niche, weird thing, but I feel as somebody in TV, you'll know what I'm saying, that when we were broadcasting it, the executives decided that they wanted a video on demand folder on the cable boxes for Global Citizen. So when you're click guide, if anybody remembers this, unless everybody is just streaming now, but if you click guide and you'd click through, sometimes there'd be an advertisement for, some big thing that they were pushing, and you'd click onto it and it would take you to this bucket of content. The problem is there was no content for the Global Citizen Festival because it was all music performances and they didn't have the rights to put those on there. So we needed content. And we had been running around getting pictures of celebrities holding this red circular chalkboard that said, "Together we can," and fill in the blank. And it was Global Citizen's little slogan. And so then celebrities would write in end childhood hunger or provide vaccines for all, and we would take a picture with them. So I was helping out on that project because it was a big deal for MSNBC, so the president's office was involved. So I was I have an idea for the video on demand folders. What if we turn that into an interview series? We could interview those people instead of just taking these static pictures of them. And they were okay, that could work. So I basically hacked the system here at NBC Universal and got myself and my little chalkboard included on this thing called Global Booking, which is this list where when a celebrity is coming to NBC, they say, hey, if you come here and you do your interview with us, you can do the Today Show, you can do the Tonight Show, you can do late night, you can do our talk shows. Access Hollywood, it's all under one roof. We'll do this to you. And I had them add to it. And you can do Global Citizen and Savannah and her chalkboard. And it worked out because we have all of the best celebrities coming here. And also because nobody wants to say no to this easy 2-second thing that, by the way, is for a really good cause. So they said yes. So I got to start interviewing all these amazing celebrities. And it just kind of kept on going from there, that I would jump in on little projects. We also had a streaming service before streaming services were really a thing called Shift by MSNBC. And because the president of MSNBC, it was a big project for us, I was in on these meetings about it. And I asked if I could produce one of the shows. And so I learned how to produce the show called The Book Report. I was in a control room. It was my first time building a rundown. And what The Book Report was our anchor would interview 3 authors each week. And so I actually read all 3 books each week and wrote all the questions, which was something I could do while I was an assistant sitting at the desk. I could read the books and I would read them all and then do the questions. And all of the authors were shocked by the anchor's questions because it was evident and reflective that they'd actually read the book. And so for the one time he was going out of town and wasn't going to be there for the weekly show. And he was just like, well, you should just do it because you were reading the books and you're writing the questions anyway. And so my friend went in the culture program for me. And I mean, the stakes were very low. I kid you not. I think like 13 people would usually watch these things. So it's not like it was my big break or anything, but it just got me more comfortable and I was doing these things. And then, and this is the final piece of the story, when Trump was inaugurated in his first term that January, at the time, MSNBC had been in tape on weekends. This show called Lockup that was like this prison show that aired most of the time. But we needed more live coverage because there was so much breaking news on the weekends. Protests, the Women's March, obviously the inauguration, things like that were going on. And so we decided to add more live coverage. But what happens is correspondents are mostly dedicated to like Today's Show and Nightly. And so there wasn't really anybody for MSNBC. And so the head of weekends came to me and was like, you've been doing this digital stuff. Would you ever consider like doing some stuff for the weekend? And I was like, yeah, can I pay you to let me do that? I will 100% do that. And so I started doing little stories for the weekend. I had Steve Kornacki. Obviously, we all know and love Steve Kornacki, our khaki god who does the big election nights. I had him teach me the big board so I could do big board segments and load numbers in there and stuff for the weekend and just tried to become useful and valuable. And then in tandem with that on the same timeline, NBC Universal made this big investment into Snapchat and we became content partners with them. And I tried out, like hundreds of people, actually, they sent it out to the whole news group. I just tried out to host this show. I didn't even know what it was. I didn't know it was on Snapchat. And then Snapchat ended up picking me to host what became Stay Tuned, which was the NBC News show on Snapchat that officially made my job something that was hosting a show rather than being an assistant. And then we got to that point.
Wow. How did it feel when you found out that you would be hosting this Snapchat series?
Oh my gosh, it was crazy. Well, it was kind of weird. I didn't even actually like directly find out. I was invited to this meeting. Basically, everybody else thought that they told me I got it. And it was like one of those classic, like funny, weird things. And I go to this meeting right here in 30 Rock on the 11th floor that I'm invited to. And it's like people that are going to work on the show that I'm going to host that I don't realize I'm hosting yet, as well as people from Snapchat coming to talk through it all. And they start playing in the room the things that I had been filming where I still thought I was like auditioning and I wanted to crawl under the table. I was like, oh my God, why are we watching this? What's going on? And then it became evident to me literally during this, like, wait, I think I'm hosting this show. So we like break for lunch or something. And I'm like, is this a done deal? And he's like, yeah, his name's Andrew Springer. I loved him. He was our executive producer who launched the show. And it was just such a funny way to find out. But it just felt like such a relief in some ways because, and I think that this is something a lot of young people will understand, like you have those moments and for me it was years of like, am I on the right track? What am I doing? I didn't go to school. I didn't do all this to be an assistant forever. Like how do I change the path that I'm on? I think I'm doing the right things, but what happens? And it just was one of those things that felt very organic and like the exact right step that I could not have known was even around the corner, even a possibility. News on Snapchat was not a thing until we did it. And the fact that I love that for my story, that's the job that like turned me into like an on-air officially person because it was just such an organic job for me as like a young person who used social media, who was native to the platform. It worked out. It was like, for me, such a God thing that it was like, that was the right job. I didn't jump from the fill job, the assistant job for other opportunities that came up that were not on air, but that just would have taken me out of the grind of being an assistant. And I waited and it was just like, it was the right thing.
Yes, I always tell aspiring journalists to get that foot in the door and then you can maneuver, and you are a testament to that. Can you give any advice for something like that and how that worked out for you?
Totally. I've got a lot of advice on this. I mean, for me, first and foremost, and I kind of just said this in the story of the jobs that I had, but is any job is a good job. Like get your foot in the door, like you just said. I mean, I literally could have been like sweeping the floors here, but I was in 30 Rock and I could have asked people to go to coffee. I could have seen what those people were doing and how they did their jobs. I could have shadowed. I could, so just getting to a place where you at least think what you want to do is represented somewhere there. Doing that job. The other thing I would say is like, you have to make sure, and this is something I really tell a lot of young people who come to me who like, might be working on one of my shows and they want to be on air, is you have to do a good job at the job that you are actually doing before you go try and take on these other things or chase your dreams in a more overt way. Because no one's going to recommend you or be able really to recommend you in good faith for something else that might lead to that dream opportunity if you're not actually doing the job that you have been hired to do and that a team really needs you to do well. So like those are big things for me. And then I also mentioned this, but a big test for me is just as long as I'm learning something, it's a good job. As long as I'm learning something, it's a good story. As long as I'm learning something, it's a right place to be, because you just can't discount what may end up being such an important lesson that you learn in that position and not even understand how it could connect to your future. But that's a big thing for me. I always like grew up with everybody saying like, oh my God, you ask so many questions, which obviously as a journalist is a good thing. But like curiosity is probably the number one trait that people who know me would say that I have. I interview everybody constantly. And I think that when you're in a job, though, the mindset of curiosity of just like, how can I take something away from this? What do I not understand that I need to understand? Knowing what you don't know and recognizing that and asking for the help that you need can be so valuable in moving to your next step.
Absolutely. And you were also surrounded by heavyweight journalists from the very beginning. Was there any pressure or intimidation there walking down the hallways and seeing these people that you look up to and also needing to earn space in this building?
Oh yeah. Big time yes to all of it. And I still feel that way a lot. And um, yes is the answer. I mean, it was always crazy to me. Like I will just, anytime I was on set, Lester Holt, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm like sitting right there and that's Lester Holt. My parents are always like, oh my God, she's on Nightly, even though I've like had my job here for years. And same now with Tom Yamas, who's in the chair. Yes, 100% is the answer. Also, as somebody who grew up, like I can't like overemphasize what a nerd I was about all of this my whole life. Like the day that like anybody who had worked at the Today Show's biography, for example, would come out, I would like be waiting at Barnes and Noble for the doors to open to buy it, like the day that I could get my hands on it and just like devour more information about this place and this industry and this show. And so yes, like to all of these people, I also remember like the first time that my first week here as a page, and my mom came here and moved here with me, and we were like around 30 Rock, and there's a J. Crew. Actually, literally, I think it's directly under the office that I now have in 30 Rock. Like if I fell through the floor, I would fall into J. Crew. And like, when I went into that J. Crew, and Natalie Morales, who was here at the Today Show for years, she was shopping in there, and my mom was like, "That's Natalie Morales." It's like, I know, I see her. And then years later, for Natalie to be somebody who was a total mentor to me and a confidant of mine and somebody that I could go to for advice, it was one of those wild things. Same with Harry, I grew up watching. He was the anchor of CBS This Morning, which is, CBS This Morning. It has a different name now, but was like their big flagship morning show. Also a legend. And I interviewed with him on my birthday one year, and it went when I got the job. And it went so well, I missed my own birthday dinner because I was like with Harry for 2 hours. And then we went to the nightly control room, and I was just like totally like, couldn't even believe it was happening. And now for him to be somebody that also serious mentor. I'm looking at this adorable picture I have of us on set together on the Today Show that I keep in my office. Yes, constant pitch moments, constant intimidation. And for me, the thing is, I had to really like teach myself by watching other people. I didn't go through local where you get the daily reps and the daily chances to mess up in a market that is not the national one with millions of people watching. And so, yes, every day was like, okay, I think this is how I should, enunciate this word. I think this is how I should handle that. Okay, they want me to like ad lib the tag. Okay, I think I could do that. Like, let me like go through in my head what I think I would say. Like that was all kind of me figuring it out. There also was, understandably so, people who were probably like, where did this girl come from? Like she was somebody's assistant that she's hosting a Snapchat show, and now all of a sudden she's on the air. And so I think that, just kind of continuing to work through that, which was sometimes scary for sure. Not everybody was always super nice about it, but growing thicker skin is also always an important piece of growing up. And I think that it makes sense because nobody had done what I had done before. Now it's a little bit more common to an extent anyway to kind of come from a digital background and then maybe end up at a network or start doing more television reporting after you've been doing it digitally. But that was just not a thing when I did it. And I really kind of like engineered it and just tried to figure it out and like looked at every day as this like project for how I could try to kind of learn something else or expand or ask those questions like I mentioned. But yeah, it definitely came with with a tough side of it as well. And tons of pinch me moments. And like, and I mean, even when you start as a page in this building, it's crazy. You're just like riding the elevator with Jimmy Fallon, and it's like, oh my gosh, what is going on?
Exactly. It also makes me think about, I've realized I've been anxious. I've had anxiety in recent years, and why we decided to choose jobs like this when we're anxious people, like, is blows my mind.
No, same. I'm like, I wish I wanted to do something else. A lot of the time, something that didn't, because there's obviously like the fact of what we have to cover a lot, and just like the news is anxiety inducing for some people, and like being in that headspace, and then also the headspace of a competitive career that does kind of keep you constantly wondering, am I doing enough? Am I enough? Am I in the right spot? Like, yeah, it certainly feeds into the anxiety piece, no question.
And now you host the streaming channel NBC News Now. Can you walk me through a typical news day for you?
Sure. Yeah. So my show is, it's on News Now. It's called Morning News Now. We are live at 7 a.m. I obviously get in a lot earlier than that to be completely transformed and to go through scripts. I get what's called my starter's note the night before. So that's what we're planning to put in the show the next day that producers put together. And so the day before is when I'll read through everything that's provided in there. And then sometimes I'll have questions like, is this what we should be leading with? Or can we add this story? And a lot of times they are things that we've been working on, bookings for me that I've been wanting, or pitches that I got that I really liked. So I'll go through most of those things at night. And then I come in the morning, I read through and rewrite scripts and questions. I'm a big ad libber though when it comes to questions, because I'm like really like I like to just listen as somebody's talking, and then a lot of times it is, there's certain questions that just have to be asked, but a lot of times you can kind of like see like, wait a minute, can you explain what you just said, kind of a thing. But I do take the time to rewrite questions in the morning, as well as rewrite any other scripts, and then go to hair and makeup. We're on the air, we're live from 7 to 9, but here's kind of a quirky thing about my show. And when you say a news kind of cycle in a day, my show re-airs until noon on News Now, our streaming service. And so myself and my co-host, Joe, we're essentially on standby through that time for any breaking news that would happen, which happens a lot. Like actually yesterday, I ended up anchoring a press conference from the Oval Office with the president, where he was talking about if he was firing the Fed Chair Jerome Powell or not. And that didn't end until, I don't know, 12:30 or 12:45. So it really depends. The show is like, has its bones ready to go. And most days I'd say, we can stick to that. But then there are a lot of days when something's happening right as you're going on the air, things get thrown out the window. Few times when we've been in full on rolling breaking coverage over either whether it be natural disaster like weather events, whether it be manhunts out of a prison that are like unfolding in real time, the queen dying, like all different types of things that will just happen, that all of a sudden you're actually on the air for hours instead of just those 2 hours, or going up to cover different types of events, press conferences, things like that. So that's all kind of a jumble. And then in terms of like how my day goes, it really depends from there. I'm a correspondent, so I report for Today's Show and for Nightly News. If I've got a nightly spot, then it's typically a long day, because you kind of turn as soon as you get off air to figuring out who you're going to interview for that, getting those interviews done, writing the story, and then sometimes being live on set. And then other days, it's just kind of random, which I like a lot, just like for the way my brain works, that it's not, no 2 days are the same. But like some days I can get out of here at some reasonable point after my standby, but a lot of days end up being long days. But, I think that's what you sign up for with this.
Do you remember your first time filling in on the Today Show?
Oh, for sure. Oh my goodness, yes. I do, yes. And it was, that was, just really kind of mind-blowing, to be totally honest with you. Yes, so I fill in quite a bit now on the third hour of the Today Show. And the first day I totally remember like going and buying a new outfit and like making my sister come with me everywhere and telling me what she thought about the outfits, and like just the prep and getting ready for it. And it's just so funny, and I think that people probably feel like this no matter what your job is, where I, go on TV every day. People probably every day do some facet of their job. But when you're even doing the same thing that you do, but just in a slightly different environment, or where it feels like the stakes are slightly higher or just different, just the nerves that come with it. And yes, I just remember being like, oh my God, the countdown to like, we're live in 3, 2, and just like, that feeling of just like total, like, oh my gosh, is this like heartbeat gonna completely consume me, like are words gonna come out of my mouth, like that kind of thing. I remember that, but it was so much fun. And every single time, like next week I'm doing it a couple days, like it's just like I can't believe that I get to be here. And I think I'm one of my things I love to think about is remember when you wanted what you have right now. I love that little saying or motto. And any fill in there for me is that, like, remember what you wanted when you have right now. If I would have been told back when I was assistant, like, that even one time you're going to get to fill in for 5 minutes, I would have been like, no way. Like, I can die happy and that's it. And, it's natural as humans and it's a good thing to have ambition, of course, as a woman, especially, but like, we're always looking for the next mountaintop. And I do think that that is a good thing. And that's what propels us. But sometimes maybe you're on it, or at least stay on that one that you're on is a good enough mountaintop for at least a period of time without needing something else, which is very hard in this industry, as I'm sure you experience as well. But filling in there is like that reminder for me. Like, that makes me feel like, okay, like things were going okay enough if I'm getting to do this even every once in a while.
Do you remember the phone call being asked to fill in on the Today Show?
Yeah, I remember actually, it was an email that comes from our scheduling department, and I was like, is this like what? Because like sometimes I'll get asked to do standby and things like that where you're not really on there, and I was like, no way. And the senior producer of the third hour is somebody I'm very close with. I love her so much. Her name is Cecilia, and Cecilia, I'll always like go to Cecilia with my crazy questions and just like, what do you think about this? And I do my homework really intensely whenever I fill in. So I'm like telling her like, oh, you should watch the show. I just watched the whole season because we're interviewing the guy or whatever. So we're always talking about stuff, and she just has walked me and talked me through so many things. Same with like everybody at the Today Show. I mean, the executive producer, Maz, is amazing. Ali Markowitz also in the third hour, and Libby, who's the leader of the Today Show. And Libby was the one who really, has given me so many opportunities that I'm just so grateful for, and like believed in me and seen me. Like, she was the one who let me start doing stories for the Today Show when I had just been doing the Snapchat show. And I would like pitch her all the time, but they didn't have to say yes. They didn't have to say yes at all. And like, she believed me and let me do it. And actually that too, just going on the Today Show for the first time, period, to do a story even, I just I can't even express to you how I thought it was happening. Actually, the first time I was in studio here, my very first time ever, I was in LA remote. This is a funny story. The first time I was here from Studio 1A, which, is a big deal, and it's the studio
Yes.
that I was a page in, by the way. I was the Weekend Green Room page and the Today Show Plaza page. So being in that studio as a page and then obviously going on air is just, it was crazy. My now husband, but then boyfriend, he did not tell me he was going to do this. He came to the Today Show Plaza to like watch me from outside the window, and he like was walking up to where the security is, but the anchor's name is Savannah Guthrie, who I know and love and is like this incredible powerhouse woman. And my boyfriend had said like, I'm dating Savannah and she's about to be on, like, can I just like stand here to watch for a minute? And they very understandably so thought he meant Savannah Guthrie, who's obviously not dating, and like a crazy person coming. They were like giving him a hard time. Then he's like, no, Savannah Sellers is the other one. And they were like, oh, Savannah Sellers. They were all like, she's going on, because they've known me for years as a page and everything. And so it's so funny. I didn't even know who was going to be there. But in the back of my first time in Studio 1A, you can see my now husband over my shoulder, like looking like it's so funny. So that too, like, it's just any of these moments of the Today Show have been a very personal like milestone, and also for my whole family, because it's been something that I've wanted for so long. But yes, I remember getting the email to fill in for the first time, and I remember talking to Cecilia and just being like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening, and just like taking my prep so seriously, talking to her about it so much. So yes, I do. I'll never forget it.
You've also done some amazing interviews, and I want to talk about the exclusive with Anna Sorokin or Anna Delvey. When you watch the limited series Inventing Anna, the journalist is trying to get an interview with
That's so
Anna. Have you ever thought about that you're that person in a way because you got that exclusive interview? I always think about that.
I did not. That's like Inception. No, I have not thought about that. That is so funny and so true. But yeah, we did work on that one, and then we ended up getting it. You're right.
How did that interview come to be? I'm so curious.
I will tell you. So we had been talking about it for a while and wanting to figure out a way that we could speak with her. She was still in custody, so she was like, it wasn't like we could just call her up or like go to her apartment and interview her. And what ended up happening was we had been interested for a long time, and she actually eventually agreed to talk because, y'all may remember this, she was like making art in prison, and like wanting to talk about it and selling it. And by the way, it was all selling out. And she was actually making like a lot of money making this like chicken scratch type of like style art. And so she was kind of willing to talk. She eventually said yes. My absolutely fantastic booker, Haley, had been all over it for a long time and trying to make it happen. And then she said yes. And then they were like, Savannah, she'll do it. It's going to be from the system. It was via not even Zoom, like the detention center's video system that only lasts for 20 minutes. So she had to keep calling me back, which we had to just like hope that she would call me back when the 20 minutes were up, it would end. And then she would call me back and we would start again. It was such a process to get this whole thing rigged to be able to record it. I was just sitting in my office here in 30 Rock. She was, Skyping or Zooming or whatever this video conference is into us. It was really wild, Stephanie, especially like as somebody who had seen the show, of course, and who also just like, I knew the lore of that story from the first article about it that was like so much buzz, especially here in New York City. And like as a New Yorker, you would kind of know like, oh, that's the hotel that, she didn't pay for the bill at, that's that restaurant, whatever. Like you kind of like knew the lore of it. And then the show comes out. And then when that happens, it was crazy. I also will say it was wild just talking to her because the actress in the show, Julia Garner, did such a good job. It was like crazy talking to her because it felt just like watching the show. But that was a challenge because you're talking to somebody who is essentially like a convicted fraudster, but I really just wanted to understand if there was like any remorse for that, but also somebody who's like become such a part of pop culture that there's like these kind of like human interest questions, but you still have to be critical of it and kind of know that it's somebody who's might be sort of playing you as you're talking to them. And really just, that was a big one where I had to be like so ready to go with my homework. So that I could, if she said something, I could say, well, actually, I don't think that's what happened. This is what happened, that type of thing. And just kind of like thread the needle and walk the line carefully. But it was fascinating. I was very grateful that she gave us as much time as she did. I've actually interviewed her since then and spoken with her. And so, I appreciate the time that she's given. And that interview, there was a lot of interest in, which was pretty cool. I knew that there would be, but it was like more than I thought. And it was definitely an experience.
Yeah. Did anything surprise you about that interview in talking to her?
It did surprise me. It probably shouldn't have been surprised, but like when I asked her, like, are you sorry? And she was just like, well, who would I be sorry to? I just really like, and I was like, well, maybe like this person that you lied to, this person, and these people. Like it was just, she was just ready to go, and so that was, it didn't surprise me because I prepared for that, but it did, it tested me, I guess I should say, for sure. And then I just was sort of surprised by the pickup on it. And actually the last thing that I don't think this made it into any of the interviews, but one thing that did surprise me in the interview, it's very funny, is she said at the end as we were finishing up, I like your glasses. And you may remember she kind of wears glasses like this. And I was like, oh, thank you. And then she asked me if I was wearing them because of her glasses. It's like, no, I did not come to this like in costume as you, but that was just kind of a funny moment. Yeah, let's see them. There you go. Actually, yours look more like hers. I can't see without mine, so mine are all
I have contacts in, so I'm blind if I put these in right now.
I can only do them for like an hour at a time.
I was going to ask you, how often are you asked about your glasses and what type of glasses you have? I'm actually certain that it happens more frequently, right?
Yeah, that is such a good question. I don't think anybody's ever asked me that. And yes, I'm asked all the time. And the thing is actually the glasses that I used to wear were very similar to these ones, but I actually found them at an antique shop in Rome. And so I would tell everybody like, I'm sorry, I got them in this like weird little antique shop. Everything on the inside is like rubbed out. And then I lost those. So I had to order something that like just kind of looked like them. So now I'll always tell people, I'll message them back like, there's like a little style number on the inside of the arm. I'll send that, but I get asked all the time. And people always like, do you really need those? And it's like, I very much need them. And when we started the Snapchat show, my co-host, who's one of my best friends, Gotti Schwartz, and we both wear glasses. So I think people did think they like put us in like this is a news costume, like throw some glasses on, but they're real. They're real.
Well, let's set the record straight. What brand glasses do you have?
These glasses that I have on right now are Gucci.
Okay.
And I get them though, like, because I've actually now ordered them a couple times after losing them, from like, glasses.com or something like that. And then I just like go put my lenses in them and they're not that expensive. I have like like more, look, they actually, all the ones that I have right next to me all look exactly the same, which is so funny. They're like not any different. I have like other options, but I just like gravitate towards the same ones. You know what I mean?
Do you have so many issues with the ring light and
Yes,
glasses?
I mean, it's probably bugging you right now. Yes, it's always making a glare. Every shoot I'm on, crews are like, and trying to like raise the light and figure it out. That is
Yeah.
unfortunate. And I have the whole anti-glare and stuff. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I have anti-glare. It doesn't do anything, but I
Yeah.
thought maybe you had some secret sauce. I
I
don't know.
don't. Usually if you lift it higher, it at least kind of gets out of the frame, but then your lighting's weird, but oh well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You've also covered some amazing international interviews. You did the royal wedding, right?
My gosh. Yeah. That was one where I remember that call too, being told I was getting to cover that. That was crazy. Yes, I got to go to the UK for Harry and Meghan's wedding. And it was just, I mean, a literal dream trip, never mind a dream work trip. And because we were doing it, I was mostly doing it for the Snapchat show, but I did do a little bit for MSNBC and the network when we were like doing special reports. And they had, like for example, actually, I always forget that I did this after the wedding, after they got married. And they came out in the carriage and like rode through the town of Windsor. They had us all along their route basically to kind of like do live hits of this. And while I'm live on TV, I'm not kidding you. Like you can probably find this on the internet. It is recorded. I'm like explaining like, oh, blah, 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 whatever I'm seeing around me, reporting. And I'm turning around as they're coming and I'm like waving. And I do swear that Meghan looked right at me and waved. But I said on TV, I'm like, like I seriously like freaked out on TV, and it is so funny to me still to this day that I just got so caught up in it. I mean, I don't know how you couldn't. Like, you get there, it's the storybook town. When you see this castle, Windsor Castle in front of you, you're just like, okay, we don't do things like that in the US. Like just seeing this massive castle and this royal family that's like in there behind its gates and these people getting married and everybody, at least that came out, so supportive of this couple and this family and everything. It was just like it was hard not to be just so enthused by the whole thing. And it's, just like one of those feel good moments for the most part of just like, oh, these two people who are in love with each other. And we got to do so many fun segments. We did, like an etiquette segment and like royal rules segments and just running around London and Windsor. I honestly can't believe that was real. It was so much fun.
Amazing. Any other standout moments that come to mind in covering news at NBC?
Yeah. One that I always talk about, but that is, definitely a darker, tougher, more serious topic was I was on the ground pretty much right after the shooting in Parkland. And for me, the reason that it was so impactful was because it was the most viewed day ever on our Snapchat show was the day after the Parkland shooting, which just like really struck me. Like that is like teens tuning in to see what happened to other teens when they just went to school. And for me, that was a big also like self-reflection point of just like how impactful the show kind of was. And like it was a real responsibility and we are reaching a really serious number of people. It was something like 17 or 18 million people that watched that day. And then to go there and meet these students who had happened right in their classroom, it was a really incredible show for them of just like their resilience and the way that they were showing up for each other. And then obviously the like really necessary conversation around gun control that shooting sparked. And I think it was just one for so many people, just like so many students in one high school on Valentine's Day. And for me, it was a big, breaking news event to get to go be on the ground and cover. And it felt very much like it was important to my audience and I could do it responsibly and bring them voices of their fellow peers who had been there. And I still talk with some of the kids and families that I met when I covered that. And it's just like one that's totally stuck with me. And just a reminder again about like the power of the reach of some of these platforms that I have and covering these things in a way that works for that generation.
Well, that's a great pivot because you've talked a lot about the Gen Z and the millennial stories in covering at NBC. What do you feel like is not talked about enough right now when it comes to these younger issues?
That's a really good question. I think that we are getting there with talking about mental health. I still don't think we talk about it enough. I still don't think that young people especially feel enough like they are not alone or that they know what to do if they are experiencing a mental health crisis. That's a big one. I also think, and this is a big part of what I cover, is social media, but I think just how social media has impacted the mental health of our kids is a huge one that I do cover and that we do talk about, but I think we're still just scratching the surface of it, right? It's kind of like we've all been part of this experiment of having social media on our phones and the internet in our pocket at all times. And what does that ultimately do to all of us, I think, is a big question, whether you're a teen or not, really. And I do think that we will continue to see the impacts of that as young people get older. And then another big one for me that is really important to young people and that impacts the world that they grew up in is climate. And I think that young people care so much about climate. And what was really interesting for me when I was covering the election is that is one of those issues that feels like it's more generational than it is partisan, which is not the case for a lot of issues. And the fact that there was a pretty clear divide, just depending on how old you were, on how that issue sits with you, was an interesting one and something that I'm like staying on and we'll keep covering, and I think could be interesting as we look at politics moving forward.
And you got to get on air and talk about those topics during election night, didn't you?
Yeah, on election night, yes, that was also a pretty amazing wild career moment because it was actually so I'd been covering youth vote type of stuff and especially via my Snapchat show would we were talking to real teens all over the country with a really heavy focus on swing states, of course, the ones that really matter because of the way the Electoral College works. And so we were sourcing these real teens from all over on both sides of the aisle. So important to me to represent all viewpoints and going to these swing states and talking to them on their campuses and that type of thing. So I had been doing that this whole time leading up to the election. It was actually only a couple of nights before election night. I think it was I want to say it was Thursday, and the election's Tuesday, of course. And on Thursday, my boss comes to me, and what was really going on is she was like, we don't have a lot of commercial breaks, and we have, these hours and hours that could be even more hours than we think, depending on how it's going. We want some people who are prepped on certain storylines to be here, kind of on standby. Can you do that with sort of the youth vote and young people and what we see? And I'm like, oh my gosh, of course. And I was so excited. And I did, which is a huge theme, as I've mentioned. I am a big, big, big homework doer. So I learned how to use our whole system that shows you exit polling as it's coming through, learned how to read those exit polls, make sure I understood what they were saying, compare them to the years prior. And then I also just touched base with every single kid I had met along the whole entire process of reporting through the election in all the swing states. And then also called my colleagues who had done, maybe more where I had a hole, I didn't know as much in North Carolina or whatever, getting on the phone with those people, them connecting me to people, talking to those teens. And that's basically what I did from Thursday until Tuesday through that entire weekend. Just pages and pages of notes and notes and notes and notes and notes. So I had done all that homework, but I didn't really think anything of it. Honestly, I did not think I was going to get on air. I did not think I was going to get on air, even a little bit. And then what ended up happening was what we sort of were coining the bro vote, young men, was a huge storyline on the night of the election, and hearing so many people cite over and over again to our correspondents in the field, well, I'm here and I'm voting for Trump because he went on Joe Rogan and things like that. It turned out to be a hugely important storyline. Obviously, the now president won every single swing state. His numbers with young people in those states was not what you would historically expect for a Republican. And it became a very important piece of how the president got elected. And so they called me up to do it once, and then I did end up on TV kind of a lot that night, and I was more surprised than anybody, let me tell you. Also scared. That's one of those nights, it's like Savannah Guthrie, Lester Holt on an election night on their big set. What is going on? That was really wild for me. And, I was proud. It was one of those moments where, and I think these are good too, to have sometimes, where I was proud of myself. I cover a lot of politics, but not like that and not live. And I'd never been part of an election night. And whenever you can kind of have, a new sort of mountaintop, I talked about before, but wow, being on an election night, I don't even know if that's a goal I had yet anyway. And so to get to be part of that, and I, I did a good job, and I did a good job because I was very, very prepared. And for me, that is my security blanket is preparation. But it was fun to talk about because it was important, and I understood the numbers, and to get on there and be on that night was crazy.
You mentioned preparation. For those aspiring journalists or journalists new to the industry that want to get to where you are today, what piece of advice would you give?
Yeah, in terms of preparation, that is such a big one. And it's really one that I learned the importance of from Harry Smith, who I mentioned what I was his assistant, and we've stayed close, and he taught me so many things. And one of the big lessons that he taught me was if you're interviewing somebody because they wrote a book, you need to read the book. And that sounds very simple, but it's not the norm, probably, I would say. And there's enough that you can kind of like get by with a couple questions that everybody else is going to be asking just from the press materials. But I don't know, I'm just not comfortable doing that. I do read the books when I have people on. And then the other big tip is, especially in an interview setting, is if you've actually read somebody's book, if you've actually watched somebody's movie, if you've actually seen the whole season of their show, before you are either live on air with them or before you're sitting down for a taped interview, let them know that by saying, I loved something that happened on page 150, not page 2. And they're like, oh, wait, you actually read the book? And I promise you, their demeanor will completely change. They want to give you the gift of a good interview because you gave them the gift of their time and you respected them by really putting in the work necessary and by treating their project with the time that it deserved if they're going to come on and talk about it. So I'm very big on that. And I just you'll feel so much better. It's the way that I'm able to the way I do interviews is, I think, probably different than some people do. I don't take notes with me to interviews usually. I do have a good memory, so I'm good at kind of memorizing-ish things. But for me, it's all about preparation, so that then I can just be in a conversation. I know the things I've got to ask because I know the material so well that, there's 5-10 things that are must asks, but I can actually just listen to somebody and take the conversation where it needs to go, make sure I hit what I need to by the end. But it will make you better and it will make your stuff stand out.
A theater director, when I was younger, once said, learn your lines so you can forget them. And that's exactly what I think about.
That's really good. I love that. Yes. That's perfect. And that's kind of how I feel with questions that either I write or a producer writes, super helpful. And I read all of that. Again, preparation. I would never not read a note that a producer sent me. But to soak it in so much that then you don't even need it. I love that.
I also wanted to talk about marriage. Congratulations on getting married. What, has it been 2 years now? Has it even been longer than that?
Yeah, it's been longer. Isn't that crazy? It'll be 3 this September, which I really
Oh my gosh.
I just said that out loud, I think, for the first time recently. And I'm like, whoa, that's crazy. Yeah.
Wow, your epic Italian palace wedding.
Yeah, I know. It probably looked like that on Instagram. It wasn't exactly a palace in real life. And honestly, things are a lot cheaper in Europe than they are here. But yes, it was great. We actually, a lot of my husband's family is in Iran, and that means that they cannot come here. So that's one of the reasons that we decided to get married. And it was so great because I got to meet a bunch of them for the first time at our wedding, which was